This story is about the contrast between soft bodies and hard ones, both physically and metaphorically. About 12 years ago, I noticed I had gained some weight. In the early years of our marriage, I decided to take action to lose the extra pounds and improve my overall health. For the past 11 years, I had maintained a weight just 1 or 2 kilograms over what I weighed when I played football at a Division III school, where I was 110 kilograms. Despite having a sedentary job, I managed to achieve this by committing to a rigorous exercise routine 5 days a week, 2 hours a day, and by carefully monitoring my sugar intake. I only realized much later how these changes, meant to improve my health, ended up triggering a series of catastrophic events in my marriage. Melissa did not react well to my new diet and healthier lifestyle. Her initial response to my weight loss was outrage. She interpreted my commitment to health as a subtle criticism of her, thinking, "Don't you like me the way I am?" She even voiced this concern several times, which left me confused because I never once asked her to change. In fact, I made it a point to remind her weekly that she was beautiful. The underlying issue was that my improved physical condition made Melissa feel insecure. Over time, I came to understand that Melissa had developed an irrational worldview. She felt that the healthier I became, the more inadequate she felt about herself. These insecurities eventually led to her starting an affair. Though Melissa's unfavorable comparison of her body to mine did bother her, what troubled her even more was comparing herself to our 3 mutual friends, Katie, Bernice, and Nicole. These 3 women, a year or 2 older than Melissa, were all in great shape. They weren't boastful about it. It was simply a natural part of who they were, strong, healthy, and attractive. Katie and Bernice were in happy marriages, but Nicole had caught her husband cheating 2 years ago and swiftly divorced him. So quickly, in fact, that he probably felt like he'd been hit by a train. During Nicole's divorce, I provided significant support. I helped her get in touch with one of the best divorce lawyers in Minneapolis, and even lent her $20,000 to keep her business afloat when her finances took a hit. She repaid the loan within 18 months without interest. I also helped her move into a smaller house and offered to testify on her behalf if her case went to trial, which it never did. My sympathy for her situation was genuine, and I expressed it both at our house in front of Melissa and during a few lunch meetings. Melissa, however, was outraged by the support I gave Nicole, even though Nicole was as much her friend as mine. Despite the disastrous outcome of Nicole's marriage, Melissa foolishly believed that having her own affair would solve her insecurities. Since Nicole's divorce, Melissa had been acting oddly, though nothing too dramatic. Our life remained fairly ordinary with neither more nor less satisfaction than before. For the past 17 years since our daughter was born, I had generally been more interested in physical intimacy than Melissa. The way I discovered Melissa's affair was almost embarrassingly cliché. I was on a trip out of town, traveling by car rather than plane or train to a meeting location about 250 kilometers from home. The weather was icy with some snow, and I was concerned about how long the trip would take. Before leaving the meeting, I checked the road conditions and found that there was a traffic jam on the interstate with snowfall beginning. I called Melissa to let her know that I wouldn't be home for at least 4 hours, maybe longer, so she wouldn't wait up for me with dinner. During our conversation, she seemed a bit distracted but ended by telling me to be careful and take my time. When I retrieved my car from the valet and tipped him, he asked where I was headed. After I told him, he suggested I take Highway 29 and join the interstate after exit 86. He mentioned that there was a significant traffic jam on the interstate from exit 133 to exit 86, and that the situation was getting worse. If I took Highway 29 to Highway 16 west, he assured me I could shave at least an hour, possibly 2, off my travel time. Following his advice, I got home much faster than expected. As soon as I merged onto the interstate, the traffic was lighter than usual due to the jam ahead, and there were no police in sight. What happened next, however, changed everything. As I drove along Highway 29, the snowfall that had been hindering my journey finally ceased. The road cleared up, allowing me to push the speed up to 120 kilometers per hour. Because of this, I managed to reach home at least an hour and a half earlier than I had initially anticipated. When I arrived at my house, I noticed a car in the driveway, a car that initially seemed unfamiliar until I recognized it. It wasn't some stranger's vehicle after all. Due to the layout of our property, the driveway skirted around the side of the house, hidden from the view of the street, making it easy for someone to park there unnoticed. The car belonged to Fred Thompson, the head librarian at the municipal library where my wife Melissa volunteered. Fred Thompson was a man I despised. He was in his 40s with a hypocritical, toad-like appearance, a flabby, soft-bodied man that I never liked. I could never understand what Melissa saw in him, especially in a sexual context, and yet I couldn't fathom any other reason for his presence in our house while I was away unless it had something to do with just that. I parked my car across the street in the driveway of a house that was up for sale, making sure it was out of sight. Then I walked towards our house. To give you some context, our home is an old one, a grand structure that might be called a mini-mansion if it were built today. Although I never particularly liked the house, Melissa adored it. Now that our children had moved out, it felt far too large for just the two of us. Additionally, the house demanded constant repair and maintenance. We had recently repainted all the wooden floors, but there was still a lot left to do, such as installing new carpets on the long main staircase. The ceilings on the second floor were particularly high, reaching 4 meters. There was an entrance door at the back of the house and a back staircase that was far less aesthetically pleasing than the grand staircase at the front. I slipped off my shoes as soon as I entered through the back door and quietly crept up the back stairs. As I approached the guest bedroom, I could hear Melissa and Fred talking, though most of what they were saying was unintelligible. However, I did catch Melissa's voice saying something along the lines of, "The king of training will be here in about an hour and a half, so I'll have plenty of time to get myself cleaned up." I couldn't help but assume that I was the so-called king of training, though I had never referred to myself in such a manner. It was clear from her tone that she considered this training either foolish or inappropriate.